Welcome to today's episode of the Mindset Mentor Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Dial. Today, we're going to be talking about how to overcome your fears. And I say overcome with quotation marks for those of you guys that can't see me, because it's going to be kind of interesting as I talk about overcoming your fears and we dive into today. The thing I've come to realize, I started coaching people when I was 20 years old. And by the time I was 24, I had trained over 2,000 sales reps. And, I'm 37 now. So 17 years of training people, working with people, is that what I've come to realize is that everybody knows what we need to do to be successful. We know what we need to do to create the life that we want. We know what we need to do to lose the weight, to gain the muscle. We know what we need to do to make money. We know what we need to do to be happier. But a lot of times we just aren't doing it. And it used to drive me crazy when I was younger and I was first starting to train people, because I would give them all of the tools to be successful in the business that they were in, but very few people would do it. I remember asking my manager, Jeff, I was like, Jeff, how do I just help people take action? And he said to me something that I'll never forget to the day I die. He said, listen, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You can lead these people to success and give them all of the tools and tricks to get to where they want to go, but whether or not they actually do it is fully up to them. And there's a quote from Les Brown that I think is really important to talk about this. And he says, the graveyard is the richest place on earth because it is here you will find all of the hopes and dreams that were never fulfilled, the books that were never written, the songs that were never sung, the inventions that were never shared, the cures that were never discovered, all because someone was too afraid to take that first step. Keep with the problem or determined enough to carry out their dream. And so that's what I think is important, is that we have to understand that we will feel fear no matter what it is that we do, no matter what it is that we want to do. What it really breaks down to is, are we going to work past those fears to create the life that we want, or are we going to allow the fears to hold us back? And so what I'm going to share with you is actually the very first chapter of my book, which is your fears and how to actually work through your fears. The whole book, Level Up, is how to take action. The original title of the book was Take Action, and we switched it to Level Up. In part one of the book, the first 4 chapters is why you're not taking action. Because I could teach you all the tips and tricks in part 2, but it really doesn't matter if you're not taking any action in the first place, because of the fact that you're afraid of something. And so there's 3 reasons why someone doesn't take action. Number 1 is the fears that they have. Number 2 is the identity and what you think of yourself. And number 3 is your lack of purpose. And so we're going to go over today the fears that you have. And so one of the things that I remember is when I was a child, I developed this fear of spiders. And I know exactly the moment where I developed the fear of spiders. And the moment where I developed the fear of spiders is when I was 5 years old. My sister, who was 6.5 years older than me, came home from watching a movie called Arachnophobia. And I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I've never seen it. But she told me stories from the book that were absolutely stories from the movie that were absolutely terrifying. And so I remember one specific story is she was talking about how there was a scene where a spider crawls into the toilet moments before someone sits on the toilet. And I remember being 5 years old, and for the next 3 or 4 years, I remember checking the toilet to make sure that there were no spiders in it, which means that the fear of spiders were not my fear. It was a fear that was spoken into me on accident from my 11-year-old sister. But when you look at fears, this is one of the things that I talk about in Level Up. There's only 2 real fears that are built into the human circuitry. One of them is the fear of falling, and the other one is the fear of loud noises. So if you have a baby and you have a quick movement where there's a little bit of a drop, I'm not saying drop babies. What I'm saying is if there's a little bit of a movement where they feel like they're falling, their arms will naturally go back to kind of almost catch themselves. And then if have a baby as well and there's a loud bang in the distance, the baby will start crying. Those are the only 2 fears that are built into the human circuitry, which means that every other fear that you have that's holding you back from creating the life that you want is learned. Hey, if you're loving this episode, please do me a favor. Give us a like down below for the YouTube algorithm. And if you do want to purchase a book, we're going to put the link down below in the description. Somehow you learned the fear that's holding you back. And so I want you to think about this for a second. I want you to really think, what's the biggest fear that's holding you back from achieving the life that you want, from taking the action that you want, from doing what it is that you want to do, from following your purpose, following your passion, helping people? What's your biggest fear? Not like the fear of spiders, not the fear of, heights, but what's your biggest fear that's holding you back from creating the life that you want? Is it rejection? Is it failure? Is it success? Is it not being loved? Is it being abandoned? Is it not being good enough? What's your fear? Identify it real quick before I go any further. What is the fear that's holding you back the most? Okay, have you found it? Now, the next question I have for you is, where did you learn that fear? Where did you learn the fear of rejection? Where did you learn the fear of failure? Where did you learn the fear of success? Where did you learn the fear of not being loved? Where did you learn the fear of not being good enough? Where did you learn the fear of being abandoned? And when you look at fears, the way that I break it down in the book is there's only two categories of fears. And I got this from a friend of mine, and we started talking about it. My friend Chad went to Brazil, and he lived with a native Brazilian tribe really far into Brazil, like into the sticks, right? And to the point where he had to fly into a city. He had to take a entire day to drive to another city, and then he had to hop on a boat, and he had to take a 2-day trip on a boat to get to this little village where these people were. And the thing that he told me is that the primal fears that they had were so omnipresent that nobody had any fear of rejection or fear of failure or any of that stuff. And the reason why was because the primal fears are what really took hold. And so there's primal fears. The two categories are primal fears. And on the other side is intellectual fears, is the way that I've categorized them. And so how do you identify which fear is yours? Like, if you have this fear, is it a primal fear or is it intellectual fear? Well, the primal fear, which was omnipresent with these people who were in Brazil, he said, he had to walk through the forest. And when you walk through the forest, you always had to have a machete with you because you don't know if there's going to be a snake. You don't know if there's going to be a tiger. You don't know if there's going to be a jaguar. Like, you need to have protection on you. And you need to just be wary of there might be something out there. And that primal fear was always kicked on. And so how do you identify a primal fear? Is that there is physical pain or potential death attached to that fear. So when you're walking through a forest and you're seeing a jaguar in the distance, that's physical pain or potential death attached to it. That is a primal fear when you come across that animal. And it's very important to have. This is why our species survived. But when you look at the fears that you have, the fear of rejection, failure, success, not being loved, abandoned, all of that stuff, are those primal fears? No. What are they? They're intellectual fears. They are made up in your head. They don't physically exist in this universe, like the fear of rejection. And if we were to dive deeper into it, I'd be like, what is rejection? What is not being good enough? What is abandoned? And you start to really go through them and you realize it's all just a fabrication of our own mind. And so we say, okay, I've got this fear of rejection. I've got this fear of failure. I've got this fear of success. I've identified it, Rob. How do I overcome it? And this is one of the key parts, probably one of my favorite parts of the book to read to people, because I think it really has been hitting home when I've been saying it on podcasts where I've been interviewed. If you have identified your fear and you've identified that it's an intellectual fear, and now you're saying, how do I overcome it? The key is this: you cannot overcome something that does not exist. You can't, because it does not exist. So how would you overcome it? It doesn't exist. You cannot overcome it. And this is like, I really want this to get into your bones. I want you to really get this into you. Is the fear that's holding you back from creating the life that you want doesn't actually really exist in reality. It is all created in your mind. And so basically what you're doing is you're creating the boogeyman, this fear, and then you're fighting the boogeyman all day long, and you're blaming the boogeyman for the reason why you don't have the life that you want. And so instead of actually taking the action to create the life that you want, you're literally creating the boogeyman and fighting the boogeyman all day long and then taking no action. It's the craziest thing if you actually can really get this in your bones. And inside of the book, I have a quote from a guy named Carl Albrecht, and he describes fear as this, and it's the best quote that I found, a description I found among fear. He says, fear is an anxious feeling that is caused by our anticipation of some imagined event or experience. The key word in that definition is imagined. The fear that you're feeling in your body when you think of the fear of rejection, the fear of failure, it is a biological reaction to what you're thinking, not what is actually happening in reality. Let me say this one more time. I'm just going to go over it so you can really get it. The quote is, in the description of fear, is an anxious feeling caused by our anticipation of some imagined event or experience. The key word in that definition is imagined. The feeling of fear that you feel inside of your body is a biological reaction to what you are thinking in your head, not what is actually happening in reality. We're creating the boogeyman, and then we're fighting the boogeyman all day long instead of just actually taking the action we need to create the life we want. Every fear is about the brain trying to avoid some form of future pain. It's beautiful. It's a defense mechanism. Fear is a defense mechanism to protect you. And so if you're imagining these fears and you're creating these fears, the real question is, what are you trying to protect yourself from with that fear? If you have the fear of rejection, what are you trying to protect yourself from? What pain are you trying to protect yourself from? If you have the fear of failure, what pain are you trying to protect yourself from? What's the pain that you're trying to protect yourself from? And you have to really dive into it, and you start to realize, oh my God, the reason why I have the fear of failure is because when I was younger, I remember the time that I screwed up in the spelling bee and all of the kids made fun of me and I felt stupid. And so maybe you have this fear of failure because you don't want to feel stupid. Maybe you have this insecurity that you're trying to hide away, and that's the pain that you're trying to protect yourself from. But once again, the pain, it's not a physical pain. You're not going to actually physically get hurt. It's not potential death attached to it, so it's not primal. It's an emotional pain that you are holding inside of your body and inside of your mind. It's not based off of what is really happening in reality. It's based off of what you're thinking. How crazy is that to actually think about? Is that we're holding ourselves back from all of the amazing things that could be from our life simply because we have this fear that doesn't actually truly exist in reality. And the thing about when you're thinking about these feelings, when I say it's a biological reaction in your body, is your body feels the future that you're imagining. Your brain will produce the chemicals necessary to trick your body into believing that that future success or that future failure or whatever it is that you have coming, that future rejection is actually happening in this moment. That's what's amazing and also scary about the brain and body connection, is that you feel the feeling of the future that you are imagining right now in this moment, which is important, super important, because then you realize, well, if I'm imagining failure and I'm imagining rejection all day long, I'm making my body feel as if I'm currently failing or if I'm currently being rejected right now. So my brain is imagining the future and my body is getting beat up all day long. I'm putting my body through so much stress, so much anxiousness because I'm imagining a future that doesn't actually truly exist. And if we're going to imagine a future that we can fear, like, have you ever feared the future before? Of course. And you can feel it in your body, right? You can feel the physical feelings of fear. If we can fear the future, can we feel grateful for the future? Can we feel happy about the future that's coming for us? Can we get rid of the fear and realize that the fear is just something that is just a part of us? You know, there's different parts of you. There's some parts that are fearful. There's some parts that are scared. There's some parts that don't want to be rejected. There's some parts of you that are courageous. There's some parts of you that are happy. There's some parts of you that are joyful. Which one do you want to listen to? And you've got to really start to develop a relationship with your fear. You can't overcome your fears. You probably will never get rid of them. They are kind of built into your human circuitry. They're kind of built in there now at this point. Like you weren't born with it, but over years you've developed this really strong muscle to fear that rejection, to fear that failure. And you may have it for the rest of your life. So it's not about overcoming it. It's about recognizing those feelings of fear when they came up and learning to dance with your fears and going, you know what? I'm feeling the fear. Like, successful people don't fear less than unsuccessful people. What they've done is they've just learned to feel it and then take action anyways. There's no one that says that in order to be successful, you don't have to have any fear in the world. It's just you can feel the fear and go, okay, I'm noticing it. Yep, I'm definitely scared shitless right now. But you know what? I'm going to take action anyways because it's important to me. It's important to my family. It's important to the world that I take the action I need to create the life that I want. And so fear is a beautiful thing if you actually start to use the fear and you start to work with the fear, because fear is showing you the edge of your comfort zone. And so we know that in order for you to create a life that's different than the life that you currently have, you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone, right? You are. And so fear is the physical manifestation of your comfort zone. It is showing you inside of your body that feeling okay, I'm at the edge of my comfort zone. So instead of backing away and being afraid, we remind ourselves, this fear isn't real. This is just an intellectual fear. It doesn't exist in reality. I'm meeting the edge of my comfort zone. I know that in order to grow and to be better, I'm going to have to push past this comfort zone. So instead of backing away when I feel fear, what am I going to do? I'm going to lean forward just a little bit more. I'm going to lean forward a tiny bit more. And so really what it comes down to is not trying to get rid of your fears. It's not trying to do any of that. It's not trying to, that's why in the title, the quotation marks are around overcome. It's not about overcoming the fears. It's about learning how to work with your fears and use them to your benefit. And so my question to you, and one thing I want you to journal through as you get done with this episode is, what is my biggest fear? Identify it, find it, and then ask yourself, is it a primal fear? Is there physical pain or death attached to it? Or is it just I'm creating emotional pain from it? And then ask yourself, what is that fear trying to protect me from? What is it that it's trying to protect me from? And then if I can imagine a future that scares the hell out of me, I can also imagine a future that seems amazing, that excites me, that makes me want to create the life that I want, that makes me want to go out and do some amazing things and start to change the world. And so it's really about, what frequency do I want to tune into? It's like a FM, AM radio station. Do I want to be tuned into the fear frequency and have that hold me back? Or do I want to be turned into the courageous frequency, the frequency of love, the frequency of happiness, joy? Which frequency do you want to be tuned into? Because the important thing is, it's all created in your mind. So that's what I got for you for today's episode. If you love this episode, please share it on your Instagram stories and tag me at Rob Dial Jr. And also, if you want to learn more about your fears and learn more about how to take action, this is just a portion of my book that I just taught for you guys today, which is chapter 1. The book is called Level Up: How to Get Focused, Stop Procrastinating, and Upgrade Your Life. It's available all over the internet. It's available in many countries and many translations at this point, but if for some reason it's not available in your country, you should be able to buy it on Kindle and be able to get the digital copy. If you would buy a copy, I would appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. I'm trying to get this out to as many people as possible. I've never been more proud of anything that I've ever created in my entire life. I put 3 years of so much work into this. And I wanted a step-by-step process to understand that you are given the most complex piece of machinery in the entire universe in between your ears. But we just don't know how to use it. And I wanted this book, Level Up, to be the manual for your mind. So if you want to get it, once again, it's called Level Up. You can search Level Up Rob Dial anywhere. And with that, I'm going to leave you the same way I leave you every single episode. Make it your mission, make somebody else's day better. I appreciate you, and I hope that you have an amazing day. You are always manifesting in your life at every single moment. And I don't mean like you just sit there and then you close your eyes and you say, universe, I want to become a millionaire. And then you wake up the next morning and there's $1 million in your bank account. You are always creating your future with every single thought and every single belief and every single action that you take. The question is, are you doing it on purpose, or are you doing it on autopilot? Because most people are doing it on autopilot. And you don't need to read a book on how to manifest or any of that type of stuff, because you've been doing it your whole entire life. And so, like I said, I'm going to talk to you about how we do it psychologically, but also neurologically, how this happens to you as well. And the reason why is because if you can understand the way that you work and the way that your brain works, in your psychology, you can start to actually, quote unquote, manifest intentionally and use it to create the life that you want. The problem with that is that most people don't manifest intentionally. They don't focus their mind intentionally on what they want. So in turn, what do? They focus on what they don't want. They focus on what could go wrong. They focus on all of the things that they're afraid of and trying to protect themselves and trying to plan ahead so that they don't get caught off guard. They focus too much on what happened in the past so that that thing in the past doesn't happen again in the future. But I want you to understand this. What you focus on will actually create in reality. Whatever you focus on most, you will create in your reality. So one of the examples that I'll give you a couple of different examples. The number one fear that I hear from people, and I've been coaching people now for over 15 years. The number one fear that I hear from people is the fear of failure. People are just so afraid of failing. And I coach business owners, and I've been coaching business owners for years. So business owners, CEOs, high-level executives. Why do I coach them? Well, because 99% of the reason why a business fails has to do with the mind of the person who runs it, the mindset of the owner or the mindset of the CEO. So, when you start a business, you're excited. You're full of vision. You're full of possibility, everything that could happen. But then as you get further down the road, your focus goes from possibility and starts to drift off course a little bit. Well, what if this business flops? What if it fails? What if I spend all of this time creating this product and nobody ends up buying from me? What if I'm not good enough? What if I'm just an imposter? What if I mess up? What if I put in all of this effort to try to grow this business and I lose time and then also lose money as well? So then what do? You start to focus because your focus has deviated from the goal that you're trying to hit to what you're afraid of, what you're trying to avoid. So then what do you do when you start this business and you're 6 months into it? You start to hesitate. You procrastinate a little bit. You find yourself scrolling on your phone more than picking up the phone and actually selling your product. You tend to overthink every action that you are about to go into instead of actually acting in some sort of way and creating the business that you want. And so if you do this long enough, eventually things stall. The sales will start to slow down and eventually the business dies. And the reason why was because the thing that you are focusing on the most, the thing that you were fearing the most, you created. Because you will create in your reality whatever you focus on most. So you're so afraid of the business failing, all of these little teeny tiny things happen. You procrastinate, don't take enough action, and slowly but surely what happens? The business fails. You created your reality. Your focus became your outcome. Another example that I like to give that will, take it out of business in case you're not a business owner. Relationships. We're all in relationships with other people. It's just the relationship is just how you and another person relate. But let's say that we're talking about a romantic relationship. Maybe you've been in a relationship before, you've been so in love with somebody, and then they just fell out of love. Or maybe you were cheated on. Or maybe you were just ghosted. They just left you on red and you never heard from them again. So you get into your next relationship. Maybe you take some time to heal and you're like, okay, I'm ready to get in my next relationship. So you get into your next relationship and this time you're laser focused on keeping this person. You're focused on you being what they need. You're focused on not messing it up. You're focused on, trying really hard, to keep this thing going and to keep it afloat. And in doing that, you forget to actually be you, which is who the person's supposed to be falling in love with, right? You, not this person that you feel like you need to be. And what happens, ironically, because of that, your energy feels off. And because your energy feels off, that person senses it. So their energy is a little bit off when relating to you. You start to get a little bit too needy. The connection between the two of you starts to fade, and not because either one of you can really put a finger on what went wrong. It's not like you did something bad or they did something bad. The connection just kind of faded because it's not there, because you weren't there. Like you, as you truly are, your true self was not there. And they were trying to connect with a fake version of you, but they didn't feel for some reason, whether it was consciously or unconsciously, that there was any sort of connection. And so you weren't wrong to want love, but your focus was so fear-based and it wasn't heart-based in some sort of way. And so what happens? You're so afraid of being alone, or you're so afraid of being left again, that what happens? You end up creating the reality that you are most afraid of and you are most focused on. So let's think about this for a second, because the first thing that I always think about when I work with humans is like, why? Why would we focus on the wrong things? Why would we focus on the negative and not the positive? Well, I want you to understand that negative and positive are just labels that we as humans put onto something. But when we say something's negative, it's really what we're trying to do is protect ourselves a lot of times. That's what it comes down to. You're trying to protect yourself from being hurt when your business fails. You're trying to protect yourself from being left with someone that you fall in love with. The human brain is wired for protection, not expansion. I always say that our greatest strength is our greatest weakness. The thing that kept our species alive was that our brain was wired for protection. We could look into the future and we could see what we wanted to do and how we wanted to make sure that if we went this way, we got around the lions that were over to the side. So our greatest strength is our greatest weakness. We protected ourselves, our species survived, and our species got to where it is. But that protection now, today, in modern day, doesn't help you create the life that you want to. You don't have to worry about lions. You don't have to worry about food. You don't have to worry about water. You need to figure out how to get rid of that protection mechanism that you got inside of your brain. I guess you won't get rid of it. How to work through it is a better way of saying it. And how to actually create whatever it is you're trying to create. Because your brain, it's always looking for what's wrong. It's always scanning for danger in some sort of way. It's trying to survive, not help you thrive in any sort of way. And if you're not intentional, like very, very intentional, your focus defaults back to fear. It goes back to lack. It goes back to your old patterns. And so why does it do this? Well, when you start to look at your brain neurologically, there's a part of your brain that's the most important part of brain of what we're going to talk about today, which is called your reticular activating system. And if you've never heard of it before, if you have heard of it before, I'm going to explain it probably more in depth than you may have heard before. But if you've never heard of it before, your reticular activating system is basically your brain's filter. At 1 second, like 1 second right now, there's 11 million bits of information that are bombarding your brain and body through all 5 of your senses. 11 million. Like if I say right now, think about the feeling of the bottom of your right foot. You're now thinking about the bottom of your right foot. That was always coming in, but you weren't paying attention to it. You were filtering it out. Now, if I say, think of the feeling on, your left thumb. Well, now you can feel what it feels like in your left thumb. You weren't thinking about that just 5 seconds ago, but now you are. That feeling was always coming in. Your brain was filtering it out. So it goes from 11 million bits of information, and it only allows approximately 50 bits of information into your conscious awareness every single second. That's 0.00045% of incoming data. So most of what happens in your world is filtered out. What decides what the 50 bits of information are that make it in? This thing in your brain called the reticular activating system. And what programs your reticular activating system? What you focus on, it's going to look for. Your beliefs, it's going to look for proof to your beliefs. Your thoughts, it's going to look for proof for your thoughts. Your values, your emotions, all of these things program your reticular activating system. And the reticular activating system is just basically a bundle of nerves at the base of your brainstem that just filter stuff out. It just allows information in that's relevant to you, and it filters out the rest. The key part is relevant to you. If you think I'm an idiot, you're going to find all of the ways that you're an idiot. If you think I'm unlovable, you're going to find all of the ways that you're unlovable. If you think that I'm not smart enough, you're going to find all of the ways that you're not smart enough. And when you focus on what you're afraid of and what you're trying to avoid, and you focus on failure, your reticular activating system basically scans your environment and it scans your past for proof that you're a failure if you're focusing on failure. You see what I'm talking about here? And so you have to understand that there's this thing that has to be programmed. Same way that if you think of a computer, you got to go into the computer, program what you want it to do. It's the same thing. You've got to kind of go into the computer of your own brain and program what you want it to focus on so that it finds it. I remember I had a call probably 3 months ago at this point, and it was someone that was in Mindset University, this program that I run where we meet twice a week and for an entire year, and we do coaching sessions every single week, twice a week. And I already said it. You can learn more about it at mindsetmentor.com if you want to. But when you focus on something, you're going to find it. And one of the ladies had asked the question. She said, Rob, I just don't trust myself. And I was like, okay, why don't you trust yourself? She said, I don't trust myself because, I used to be addicted to alcohol. I said, okay. I said, why else? And I don't trust myself because I went through a divorce 6 years ago. I was like, okay. So those are reasons why she doesn't trust herself. Those were right in the front of her mind, and they were very easy for her to pull up when I asked her the question. I said, I'm curious. If there was any reason to trust yourself, 2 reasons, give me 2 reasons why you should trust yourself. And she's like, well, let me think about that. She's like, well, number 1, I used to be addicted to alcohol and now I'm not addicted to alcohol and I've been sober for 12 years. I was like, okay, that's pretty good one. What else? She goes, I lost 100 pounds and I've kept it off for the past 5 or 6 years. I was like, that's pretty damn good too. So you're telling me You don't think you can trust yourself, but you overcame an addiction to alcohol, which is very hard to do. And you lost weight, 100 pounds, and kept it off, which is very hard to do. Both of those two things sound to me like you should be able to trust yourself. And she's like, oh my God, you're right. I never think about how I did those before. And I was like, the reason why is because you're filtering out the reasons why you should trust yourself, because your belief is that I can't trust myself. So top of mind, you're thinking of all the reasons why you shouldn't trust yourself. So when you focus on something, you're going to find it. And when you find it, you're going to take action towards whatever's you're focusing on. When you focus on opportunity, your reticular activating system picks up on signals or people or opportunities or possibilities in your day-to-day life that maybe you wouldn't have noticed before. Your reticular activating system is basically the ultimate bouncer at the door. It decides what is important to you and important enough to let in and what else to completely ignore. So if you're focused on fear, you'll filter and just find everything that's a threat in your life. If you're focusing on gratitude, you'll filter and find everything in your life that's blessings. If you're focusing on opportunity, you'll spot opportunities in your life everywhere. If you're focusing on rejection, you're going to see why you're rejected all over the place. You're not really seeing reality. You're seeing a curated feed that your brain thinks that you care about based off of what it's going to go through based off your reticular activating system. On top of that, then you have something that's called the confirmation bias in psychology, which is we look for and try to find evidence for what we already believe. So if you already believe that you are not lovable, well, then you're going to find that in your day-to-day. And then you're also going to find it throughout your entire history, because in psychology, for some reason, humans always want to prove themselves correct. And through the confirmation bias, we're trying to confirm our beliefs. Our brain is not going, hey, is my belief helping me or not? It's going, I've got a belief, I need to prove it true. Oh, yep, I'm unlovable. Oh, yep, I'm a loser. Oh, yep, I'm not smart enough. If you believe something like people always let me down, your brain will filter out all of the events that showed where people were there for you. And it will only find the events that show that you are not able to trust people, that people will always let you down. It'll filter out all of the times when people were there for you. And this is how your focus becomes a reality. This is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so what you need to do is a couple different things. Number one is you need to become very self-aware of what you focus on consciously and unconsciously about yourself and about the world throughout the entire day. Because I guarantee there's some stuff that's really good, and I guarantee there's some stuff that definitely need to be adjusted. And so if you think, you know what, I'm focusing on the fact that I'm so afraid my business is going to fail. I promise you, if you're focusing on that, you're going to get that. Whether it's a month from now, whether it's a year from now, whether it's 2 years from now, you're going to get that thing. So you need to figure out and become aware of what it is that you're currently focusing on. That's step number one. Step number two is you've got to figure out what it is that you need to focus on in order to get the life that you want. So you say, okay, in order for me to grow my business to $1 million a year, parts of me are going to have to die off. I'm going to have to change. I'm going to have different beliefs. I'm going to have different thoughts. What are the things that I need to believe and say to myself over and over again in order to actually create this $1 million a year business? Because your beliefs, just FYI, something that you believe, your belief is just a thought that you've been thinking long enough that now you think it's true. You've just been thinking that you're a loser or a failure or whatever it is for so long that you just think that it's true now. It's not objectively true. You just think it's true because you've been repeating it for so long. So if that's the case, why don't I change my thoughts, repeat them over and over and over again, and eventually I'll start to believe them? Because all you're really doing in this case is you're kind of just brainwashing yourself. I wish that every person would take very seriously their own brainwashing. Because if we're not, we've been brainwashed, accidentally by our parents, by society, by ads, by social media, other people, all of that stuff. Very rarely do we sit down and go, okay, from this moment forward, I'm going to brainwash myself. I'm going to wake up every single morning and I'm going to figure out what I need to say to myself, what do I need to think, and what do I need to actually believe in order to create the life that I want. I need to be in charge of my own brainwashing. And so that's the second step there. And the third step is you need to do this. You need to become hardcore about it. You need to do this every single day, multiple times a day. every single morning. You say, you're basically waking up in the morning, you're sitting down at your computer of your brain. You're saying, I need to program myself for something today. What do I need to think? What do I need to believe? What do I need to search for people, places, opportunities, all of those things? I'm going to program my reticular activating system to think the way that I want to think and to search for what it is that I want to prove to myself. Whether that's I'm lovable, I'm not a failure, I'm good enough, I'm going to grow a multi-million dollar business. Because whatever you focus on, you will get in your life. And the way for you to actually get whatever it is that you want is to have whatever it is that you want as this magnificent obsession that you think about all day long, so much so that you actually start to believe that it's true. And then you start to believe that it's true and you start to actually go, oh my God, if this actually might be true, then maybe I should take some action towards it. So therefore, you're not holding yourself back from going and getting it. You're actually taking action towards the thing that you're trying to create. So how do you get whatever you want? You unprogram all of the stuff that you've been unconsciously telling your reticular activating system for years and years, and you start to reprogram all of the stuff that you want your brain to believe, the stuff that you need to believe about yourself, about the world, about business, about love, whatever it might be. And you program that into yourself every single day, every single morning, multiple times a day if you need to just get really hardcore on it. And eventually what happens? You do get what you want. Hey, thanks so much for watching this video. Based off of what you watch, YouTube thinks that you should be clicking this video and watching this one next. And if you want to subscribe so you don't miss any more videos, click that button right there. I want you to understand this before we dive in. No one in this world is perfect. And included in that are parents. No parent is perfect. If that's the case, that means that no parent could ever give every single child exactly what they need at every single moment. And so reparenting yourself means becoming the loving, supportive, consistent caregiver that you may have not gotten as much as you needed to growing up or as much as you wanted to. Now, if you're listening to this and you don't live with your parents, now it is time for you to be your own caregiver. And what this means is it's the process of meeting your unmet emotional needs, like feeling safe or validated or loved or accepted. At its core, reparenting is choosing to stop abandoning yourself and to start showing up more for yourself with compassion. Imagine this for a second. Imagine your adult self today walks into a room and sees your younger self maybe curled up in a corner, crying or confused or hurt or maybe even angry. And I want you to think back to that child and think to yourself, like, what do you say to them? How do you show up for them? What would you do if you walked into a room and you saw that child, which is you, and you know it's you? How would you show up for them? That's basically reparenting. It's not some like little cute concept that you see on Instagram. It's actually a really, really powerful therapy tool. It's a deep process that can completely change your own internal landscape. First, let's talk about why this work is necessary in the first place. Here's the deal. Like I said a minute ago, none of us had perfect parents. I don't want you to think that's like a dig at your mom or dad. Some of you guys had parents and you're like, yeah, they were completely screwed up. And some of you guys listening are like, my mom and dad were pretty damn good. And so when I'm saying that no parent is perfect, I'm not putting a dig on anybody's parents here at all. Everybody is always doing the best they can at any moment of their life. That's just real life. And caregivers are humans. And raising children is really, really hard. Like, children are professionals at triggering whatever is in you that is not healed. And even the most loving parents can unintentionally pass down wounds that they got from their parents, even though they tried really hard not to. And so your brain, growing up, especially in childhood, is just a sponge, and it's constantly looking around and seeing things, and it's asking itself, am I safe? Am I loved in this situation? If I do this thing, am I loved? But if I do this thing instead, am I loved more? Am I enough? Do they think that I am enough? What do I need to do to get connection? Because the child and parental connection is so important to a child that unconsciously children will kind of become chameleons to do what they need to do to feel that connection with their parents. And in turn, that can turn into different behavioral adaptations. And if your needs were not met as a child consistently or maybe securely, your nervous system learned along the way to adapt and be creative, sometimes in costly ways. And like I said, these are called behavioral adaptations. Every child develops behavioral adaptations depending on what they need to adapt to in their environment. And so maybe you grew up, and because of the way that your parents were and your environment was, you grew up thinking that love was conditional, or maybe believing that resting is lazy, or maybe you learned to internalize shame every time that you had really big feelings because your parents told you to be quiet and not to cry, and big boys don't cry, whatever it might be. So you started shaming yourself every time you had big feelings. Maybe you learned that the only way to get your parents' love was by achievement. And that could be through grades, that could be through sports. Maybe you felt like you had to earn and achieve in order to be worthy. And so if any of these sound familiar, this is why reparenting is definitely necessary. Reparenting is just the process of interrupting those patterns and showing up for yourself the way that you need to show up in those moments, in the way that you needed someone to show up for you when you were a child. It's about becoming the safe, loving, wise adult that your child needed when you were younger, but didn't always get. A really big key part to understanding your inner child is understanding that it still exists. It's kind of weird. And I remember I used to think that it sounded weird, like, oh, my inner child, that's odd. That sounds kind of woo-woo-y. But when you look at it, you didn't lose that little kid that you once were. It's probably just been buried and hidden away and ready to be rediscovered because you had to grow up, or you had to go to school, or you had to go to college, you had to get a job, or you had to be realistic. You had to stop being so creative, right? And so it's like, you kind of like, all of us are kind of like throwing the little child in the corner and just throwing stuff on top of it. And it's like, it's still there. We just need to find him again. And so you need to start treating yourself as if you had that little kid to take care of for the rest of your life. So think of this. Think of yourself at 3 or 5 or 7 or 8 years old. Think of yourself as if you're in the room with that little child right now, and you now realize as a full-on adult, you're the one in charge of them. You're the one that needs to give them love. You're the one that needs to show up for them. And you have to understand that what happened in your childhood is not your fault, but that child, now that you're an adult, is your responsibility. So stop acting like they're not there. Stop acting they don't need love. Stop acting they don't need reassurance or safety or to feel like they're worthy. And so the real question is like, what do they need? Think about that for a second. Like if you said, what does my inner child need? What did they need back then? And so what this is all about is rewiring your nervous system and learning how to feel safe being fully you. Because what ends up happening is because of the fact that we have to move and shift and change ourselves around from our true self in childhood and become a chameleon in many different ways, we abandon our true selves. What do you need? And here's what happens when you reparent yourself. It's important. You learn to stop abandoning yourself in moments of stress. You learn how to self-soothe without shaming yourself or numbing yourself. You learn how to become a safe space for yourself and then also others as well. You develop real confidence, right? Real confidence, not confidence that comes off of like achievements or how much money's in your bank account or what you've done in your life. Real confidence is like, I'm confident in who I am without any achievements necessary. And you learn how to parent yourself better, which in turn, and this is really important for you people that are parents, or if you want to have children one day, is as you learn how to parent yourself better, you become a 10 times better parent for your children that you have and a better leader for the people who are around you. And you do it from a healed place instead of a wounded place. And this is, it's a new level of responsibility for your life. You're no longer outsourcing your emotional needs to your job or your partner or your bank account or anything else. You become your own emotional anchor, which is really foreign for most people, is because our emotional anchor very rarely is ourself. We look for other people to do it. We act like we don't feel it. We try to numb in some sort of way. It's like, no. Home is me. Home is inside of me. I am the emotional anchor. Let's talk about how you actually do it, okay? Let's break down a couple powerful, actionable steps that you can do. So the first thing that you want to do, hey, number one, why don't you meet your inner child? Try this out. Like just You can do it now if you're at home and you're just sitting on your couch listening to me, or if you're just making a bagel in your kitchen, you can do this real quick. You can close your eyes and you can picture little you, maybe 5 years old, maybe younger. Just think about a moment in your childhood that holds a lot of energy for you. Like it's one of the ones that first comes up into your mind. Maybe you were scared, or maybe you were alone, or maybe you were mad or frustrated, or maybe you were worried, angry, maybe you were lost in some way. Think of that one moment where you just have a whole lot of energy. And then what I want you to do is I want you to just ask yourself, as if you're asking this child, how are you feeling? Like ask that kid, go back to that moment, because children don't really know how to process emotions. But as an adult, you can come to that child and go, hey, how are you feeling? Like, what are you feeling? And see what comes up. Oh man, I'm just really scared. Like, my parents were supposed to be home 2 hours ago and they're not home, and I can't call them because there aren't cell phones back then. And I'm afraid that something happened to them, and I feel alone, and I don't feel safe, and I don't feel taken care of. Just ask yourself how you're feeling. And then ask, what do you need from me right now? And think about how adult you, and I understand this sounds very, very foreign, how adult you can show up and speak to that child. If you walked in and you saw a child that even just wasn't you, and they're crying and they're in a corner, and you walk up, you want to just leave them in the corner. You'd walk up to me like, hey, what's going on? How are you feeling? What's going on? What do you need from me? And then you would try to comfort them in any way. There's no fucking difference between that child and you as a child when you were going through that thing, when you were not getting what you needed. Here's the hard part. Now we actually need to learn to give ourselves that. Maybe it's rest, maybe it's play, maybe it's security, maybe it's love, maybe it's acceptance, maybe it's permission to cry without fixing anything. That's what reparenting actually looks like. You listen, you validate, and you show up. So how can I help you feel safe or loved or worthy or happy right now? And then also every single day. Because realize if that's something that holds a lot of energy, and that's why I said if it holds a lot of energy to you, it's probably something that still exists in the back of your mind and is holding you back in some way. So that's the first thing, is you want to meet that little inner child as much as you can. The second thing is to create emotional safety rituals in your life. You can't really grow in chaos. And so you want to start building little, micro habits that send the message, you're safe now. So many times people can't stop working, even when they become successful. They make $10 million and they still can't stop working. The reason why is because they still don't feel safe within themselves. And so they think, oh my gosh, making more money is going to make me safer. And then they never actually feel safe within themselves. Or, people outsource their happiness and their love to someone else, so they can't stop going from one relationship to another and thinking that somebody else needs to love me in order for me to feel worthy. You create some sort of technique to help you out. Like I teach, obviously, morning mindset priming. That's one of the things that I love to talk about, but maybe you create affirmations in the morning that is like talking to that little inner child that's still there. Affirmations like, I protect myself now, or I choose differently than my parents did, or I am safe and I am protected. I am worthy of love without needing to achieve anything. And what you're doing is you're just basically speaking to yourself in the moment every single morning, and you're teaching your nervous system that I'm not going to abandon myself anymore when things get hard. I'm going to be here, and I'm always going to be the emotional rock that I needed back then. So that's the second thing. Third thing is to learn to start giving yourself the love or care or support or safety that you didn't get. Were you taught that achievement is what made you worthy, or that good kids don't cry, or that love is earned and it's not unconditional, or that you were supposed to be seen and not heard? If you were learning things like this, what you want to do is you want to start to flip the script and start talking to yourself. Practice saying stuff like, I'm proud of myself just for trying. If you're one of the ones who had to achieve all the time, maybe you tried something and you just screwed it up big time. Hey, I'm proud of myself at least just for trying. Or, my needs are not a burden. Or it's okay to feel sad and still be worthy at the same time. Or, if you're one of the ones that was taught to play smaller, to be seen and not heard, or to kind of hide from everybody, say something like, I'm allowed to take up space. whatever it is for you. And this is really important. You're not coddling yourself. Coddling says, you're fragile. Let me shield you from all of your discomfort. Reparenting says you're capable and worthy even when things are hard. And I will support you through the discomfort, not just try to protect you from it. You're retraining your inner operating system to believe that it's safe to be fully human and to go through emotions. And this is extremely, extremely important. Reparenting yourself actually builds your emotional muscles. When you reparent yourself, you're not avoiding struggle. What you're doing is you're meeting it differently. You're giving your nervous system what it never had growing up: safe, consistent, secure emotional co-regulation. It doesn't mean that you're babying yourself. It means that you're validating your pain so that it doesn't run your life or ruin your life. You're learning how to self-soothe instead of abandon yourself. You're making it safe to feel things instead of just stuffing them down and acting like they're not there. And it creates a more secure, self-aware, and emotionally resilient adult. And this is what a lot of quote unquote hard parents don't realize. They say, I don't want to coddle my child. They say the world is tough, and so you need to be tough on your kids. But so many studies have shown that secure adults aren't hardened by going through hard things. They're more rooted in themselves, in their emotional attachment to their parents and their emotional attachment to themselves. A secure adult is somebody who can feel fear and still take action. They can set boundaries with other people and feel absolutely no guilt about it. They don't crumble under stress or lash out at other people when they're triggered. They self-regulate. They recover faster. They repair better. They're emotionally agile. And that strength, it doesn't come from quote unquote toughing it out. It comes from healing the parts of you that you thought were only lovable when you were performing or perfect or quiet or needing to protect yourself. And so really what it comes down to is it's not coddling at all. It's emotional stability, which many, many people that I talk to every single day never had. And so as an adult, it's something that we need to learn. We need to reparent our inner child so that we can become more secure emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, all of that stuff, because then we can become better people, better parents, better leaders, better spouses. And so reparenting yourself isn't just some woo-woo, hey, tell yourself you're okay. It's about radical self-responsibility without self-blame. It's about learning to love parts of you that were shamed, and you might still to this day shame. It's about protecting the parts of you that were neglected. And it's about parenting yourself toward the future that you actually want, not, the one that keeps repeating over and over and over again because you're stuck in the same cycle and you can't figure out why. Because here's the truth, your inner child isn't holding you back. They're waiting for you to come back. And so what I want you to do is I want you to think about this. You can journal about this. You can do it right now. You can turn this episode off when we get done. You can journal it before you go to bed. Is just ask yourself, what did I need most as a child that I didn't consistently receive? And then just ask yourself, how can I give myself that this week? And it's a slow process. It's a deep process. All of these things are often invisible, but it's a kind of work that when you really, really do it can shift everything. So you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You're becoming. And that's the real magic behind all of it. Hey, thanks so much for watching this video. Based off of what you've been watching recently, YouTube thinks that you should watch this video right here. It's actually picked for you from YouTube. And if you want to subscribe so you don't miss any more episodes, click that right there. Welcome to today's episode of the Mindset Mentor podcast. I'm excited for you to hear this interview. This interview is actually with a licensed therapist named Hye-Soo Jo. And she's actually a licensed therapist through BetterHelp, which you've heard me talk about many times on this podcast. And there's a few things that we dive into that I really think are important for you to listen to. The first thing that we talk about is anxiety. What is anxiety? How do we notice it in the body? And what are some tools and tips and tricks to work through anxiety so that we can feel better throughout the day? The next thing that we talk about in this episode is worry. Where does worry come from? Why do we worry so much? What does it hold us back from? And then also, what are some tools and tricks that she can give us and you on how to get past our worrying? And the last thing that we talk about in today's episode is how to get past your control problems and how to be a little bit more okay with the unknown. So that's what we cover in today's episode. Let's go ahead and dive in. Hey, welcome to the Mindset Mentor podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited because one thing I really want to dive into with you is anxiety and stress and anxiety. I know a lot right now people are talking about anxiety, and it seems like over the past 2.5, 3 years that anxiety's been on the rise. But I'm not really sure most people know like exactly what anxiety is. So what is anxiety exactly, and what's the difference between worry and stress and anxiety, so people can kind of identify if anxiety might actually be a problem for them?
Sure. So anxiety is, let's say, like the collection of various psychological and physiological responses to perceived threat of danger. So danger can mean a lot of different things, right? It could mean there's a bear out there trying to get me, or it could mean I have a really stressful presentation that I have to present, right? So any kind of perceived thing that's going to cause me pain, discomfort, some kind of disruption. Anxiety is the resulting, like I said, collection of things that can happen to people. So, you asked about the difference between anxiety and like worry and fear and all these things. Worry, fear, dread, unease, restlessness, racing thoughts, hypervigilance, all of these things are part of anxiety. These are the psychological responses we have when we have encountered some kind of perceived danger. There's also physiological responses. So that's the stuff that's going on in our body when we are experiencing something like anxiety. So some of the things that people may have experienced when they're anxious in their body include perspiration, so being super sweaty, cold hands and feet, tense muscles, rapid heart rate, shallow breathing, gastrointestinal discomfort, so stuff going on in your tummy, blurred vision, lightheadedness, tightness in your chest. So it could be that you've experienced some of these things, all of these things, different combinations of these things, depending on what you're experiencing. And going back to the question of like, where does anxiety come from? Now we know what it is. Where is it coming from? I personally think that this is an evolved trait, and a lot of people think that too. So if you want to research into this, you'll find what evolutionary psychologists are saying, a learned trait, an evolved thing to help us survive. So, when you think about ancestry and people that lived in much more primitive times, they did encounter a lot of danger in their lives, whether that's the threat of some kind of predator or, the threat of some kind of disaster ahead of them. Anxiety actually allows us to plan ahead. Like that fear associated with anxiety is what gets people to start thinking of potential outcomes in order to prepare. So imagine somebody with zero anxiety, they probably never plan ahead, or, they don't really get prepared on a journey that they're about to take. So if something does happen, they don't have any of the stuff that they need. I do want to kind of talk a little bit about why we experience those physiological symptoms to help people understand too, like perspiration. Why do we get so sweaty? That can actually cause people to feel even more anxious depending on what they're about to go through. And your body is actually preemptively regulating temperature in the event that you need to exert a lot of physical energy. And that's where the perspiration is coming from.
Like warming up the muscles, kind of?
Yeah. Or, it's preemptively making sure that you don't overheat in the event of having to like sprint away from danger or fight off something that's trying to attack you. The reason we sweat is to regulate temperature, bring it down on a hot day. So why do my hands and feet get so cold? Your body is now, diverting blood away from your extremities into your larger muscle groups, because if there's some kind of huge danger, you generally don't need to be able to use fine motor skills. What you do need to be able to do is run away or punch something, kick something. So that's why feet and hands can tend to get very cold during these times. Why are my muscles so tense? Your body is getting amped up, right? We're being kind of flooded with adrenaline, stress hormones, and this kind of stuff, again, is preparing us to exert a lot of physical energy to keep us safe from something. The rapid heart rate, same kind of thing, is our body is pumping blood into the areas that it's going to need in order to do this. But the issue is most of us, when we experience anxiety, it's not because we actually have to run away physically from something. It's often not because we need to fight something. we're usually just sitting at a desk or among a bunch of people in a crowd. And then we're experiencing all this stuff and we're not actually exerting that energy, and it's just being stored into our body. I know I listed all these other symptoms, but I think it's important for people to know this stuff so they can understand what's happening in their body, because when we don't understand, I think it tends to lead to even more freaking out. So like the GI issues, gastrointestinal discomfort, why do I get bubble gut when I'm nervous about something? Your body is preemptively, again, preparing to empty your system out so that you can move a little bit more effectively. So, all in all, anxiety to a certain degree is helpful for us. And I hope that people can think about it that way and understand that it's not something to feel bad about, and it's certainly not something to try to make go away. So when you're seeking out support or even healing from debilitating anxiety, I don't want people to think that they're going to go to therapy and figure out how to make anxiety stop. It's more about learning to understand it and then coping with it when it does enter your system.
That's interesting. The first thought that comes into my head, because for the longest time, I feel like whenever I had something I wanted to work through, it was like, I can't wait to get rid of this thing. Like, I've got to get rid of it. But it's not something you can really get rid of. It's something where it's like a tool in your tool belt where it's necessary. That's why it's built into us as humans. But if it takes over and it's constantly running all the time, it's not really helping. And so the way that I think about it is almost like, we have a puppy, and we took him to go get training. And as he got training, he was able to be better at going, stop barking, go outside, all of that. It seems like almost in the mind, and tell me if you think the same way as well, it's almost like going to therapy is kind of like taking your dog to a trainer, where it's like, you just want to be able to train your mind whenever these things come up and be aware of like, oh, okay, I'm feeling anxious thoughts, and then maybe have some tools once you become aware to work through them in the present moment. Is that kind of the way you think of it as well?
Totally. And I've used a similar analogy before to people. It's like athletes are training their body on a very regular basis. And they're generally training when they're not under pressure. They're training their bodies outside of competition. They're strengthening their muscles. They're making themselves more flexible, have more balance, stamina, endurance, so that when they come up to the day, whatever this thing is, their body is prepared. People cannot decide today that they're going to run a marathon tomorrow and do that effectively if there's been no training. And similar to our responses to emotional and mental disturbances, if we've been training ourselves for a longer period of time before this thing, then when this thing happens, we're prepared. We generally have some tools, some skills to turn to, rather than trying to, run this 26.2 miles without any proper preparing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what would be, if someone's out there and they've identified, man, I think anxiety is something that really does hit home with me. What are some tools, I guess, that you give people to actually start to work through them as they become aware? Like, so if someone goes to a therapist and they say, hey, like I get these, I worry a lot. I feel these anxious thoughts and I start to sweat. What are a couple of tools that you help people through this process to kind of, I guess, be more present and get control of those anxious thoughts?
Well, I always start with that education piece. What you and I just kind of went through is talking about what kind of responses one can expect, so that when somebody does experience that, they have a better understanding. Because I do tend to think that if somebody has a better understanding of what our bodies are doing, it helps us practice more compassion on ourselves. Because ultimately our body is doing as intended, as designed. So I can say, good job, Hesu. Even though my heart is pounding inside of my chest and my stomach feels like it's going to fly out of my head, like all this stuff, I can tell myself with kindness, good job, body. Thank you for keeping me safe. Now I'm going to turn to some tools to calm my nervous system down, which I'll get to in a second. Because if you're freaking out, the not helpful thing to do is to develop shame around this and feel like something's wrong with you. Something is deranged with me because I'm freaking out and I don't know what this is all about. So I hope that people can first extend some kind patience to themselves, and even self-praise for good job, body, good job, system. You're doing what you need to, but now I need to calm down. So some of the things that people can do to calm down, I think it's a lifelong practice to incorporate these things into a lifestyle. Similarly, like, you train to be prepared for a time that you're under pressure. So really, it's good to be training when you don't have that stress. So when you're at a baseline, it's good to practice these things. So one of these exercises, which is really simple, really quick, people can do this anytime, is tuning into their 5 senses. So we all learned what these were in grade school. And you can actually look it up online too if you forget what to check in with. But it's really about shifting attention. So it could be that you're in a waiting room, really nervous about something. You could do it there. You could do it sitting at your desk, but you look around and just start first like breathing in a regular pace. Breathing is automatic until we start thinking about it. And sometimes in that automated process, we stop breathing. I don't know if people realize this, but we actually stop breathing so many times during the day. We hold our breath when we're stressed out for whatever reason. So it's important to breathe, get oxygen to your brain. Those 5 senses. What are 5 things that you can see right now? Just listing them quietly to yourself mentally. What are 4 things that you can hear? And the thing with hearing is that you really got to pay attention because that's a different kind of cue that we're not always actively tuning into. But generally, you can usually hear 4, if not more, things around you. What are 3 things you can smell? It's really bringing attention back to something, taking a sniff, getting a whiff of something. What are 2 things that I can presently feel, touch? So for me, I can feel the weight of my body on my chair right now. I can feel some hair on the sides of my neck, so that kind of thing. And 1 thing that I can taste. What's a detection of taste in my mouth? It could be that you have the aftertaste of coffee from this morning, or maybe you're thinking I don't really taste anything at all. And in this mental exercise, while you've been paying attention to your 5 senses, after you get through it, you'll realize, oh, I feel a bit more calm. And that's because you shifted your attention away from this thing that you were freaking out about to just what's right in front of you. And this is the crux of mindfulness, is being attuned to your present moment, reminding that you're reminding your nervous system right now that there's no reason to freak out. Of course, there are situations where there is a very valid reason to freak out, but since you've been training your body all along, you know how to calm your nervous system down. And even though that's not going to make the valid danger around you go away, you can calm your internal experience down enough to go into problem solving. When you're panicking and you can't get yourself to, calm yourself, there's no way that you can effectively problem solve. So that's one exercise, but there's many others. There's meditation, which can be difficult for people to get into if they have 0 practice with that. So you can start with finding guided meditations online and effectively move into an individual practice eventually someday. If that's not really your jam, there's things like progressive muscle relaxation. And so this is also a guided exercise in which you pay attention to your body. So people that have a lot of attunement to what's going on physically for themselves, I think can actually access the mind-body connection a little bit easier. But people that are very unaware of what's going on in their body, this is a great practice to start learning how to pay attention to different muscle groups, what happens when you tense this muscle and then release it, regular movement in general. So I know not everybody wants to hear this, but exercise is important, and it actually helps us maintain a calm baseline. I mean, if you have great cardiovascular health, if you are regularly and preemptively training your body to be, kind of mentioned this stuff earlier, but strong, balanced, have endurance, stamina, this is all going to help you be pretty balanced on a regular basis. And another thing is you want to be mindful of your caffeine intake, any other stimulants that you might be taking. This kind of stuff can increase people's levels of anxiety, but they're not really thinking about it that way because everybody drinks coffee. It's how I have to get up and get going in the morning, but it could actually be contributing to panic in your life if you're a little bit too jittery.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so funny because I've actually realized the same thing. And I've been saying that a lot on the podcast recently is like, people should just monitor their caffeine intake a little bit more because sometimes they're like, I don't know why I'm so anxious throughout the day. And then they realize they've had 4 cups of coffee. It's like, hey, what if you tried 1 or 2 and just see if maybe you feel a little bit different throughout the day. There's one common thing that it seems like you keep bringing up, and I'm really curious about it. So it seems like one of the best ways to get out of anxiety is to get yourself to the present moment. And so with worry and anxiety, it seems like a lot of times we are basically thinking about something that's in the future that may or may not happen. And then our body seems to be responding as, hey, this is a potential threat. I need to get myself ready for it. And so do you find that most of the time when someone has worry, when they do have anxiety, the problem is that they're just too much in their head, they're too much in the future, and that the most important thing is just like, hey, come on back to this present moment. Like I always say, your brain is basically somewhere else, but your body is always here. And so it seems like the body and coming back to the body is one of the biggest anchors that you can remind yourself to come back to when you're starting to feel those feelings, right?
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. Some people will say that depression is when our mind is stuck in the past or somewhere else, like you said, and anxiety is when our mind is stuck in the future. But life is what's happening in the present. So when people are, debilitated by depression and or anxiety, they're really not living because they're not able to focus on what's right in front of them, which is our real life. So yeah, I would definitely agree with you that anxiety is largely about our attention just being stuck in a place of this may or may not happen.
Yeah. I'm really curious with worry kind of being a part of anxiety. I have a friend whose mom worries like crazy. Like I didn't realize people worried so much until I became friends with him and then started, talking with her and hearing stories and stuff. But I'm curious with worry, do you feel like a part of worry is making us feel like, okay, there's something coming up in the future maybe, but in this present moment, it kind of makes us have a fake feeling of control because I'm doing something about it right now? Or like, what is worry and what's the point of it? Obviously there's benefit because worry can't keep us alive, but like, what is the actual point of worry for humans?
Oh, good question. You kind of already answered that bit. I think in some cases, a little bit of worrying is what allows us to plan ahead. I think people have done some brain scans when somebody's really anxious or worrying about something in the future. There's a certain part of your amygdala that's being highlighted and the prefrontal cortex is activated. This is what allows us to think about potential scenarios or, put ourselves in somebody else's shoes and imagine what might happen in that situation. And they get really worried about it to hopefully help us prepare. But the thing that you said that's really interesting is like some people might feel in some kind of way that they are doing something about the situation by being worried. I've had many clients kind of describe this experience too. And so then we go deeper into that for me to help them see that the worrying didn't actually do anything unless it did put them into action in some form. But a lot of times it's like, is your worry contributing to the solution to this problem that you've identified? And then even with worry, like a lot of people talk about worry decision trees, and it's thinking about the problem at hand and asking yourself, can I do anything about this right now? Can I actually physically or mentally start doing something about this problem? And if the answer is no, then, you remind yourself, okay, worrying is not actually going to solve it. I can't actually do anything, which means this thing is outside of my control. That actually allows us to start bringing our attention back to the present. If it's outside of my control, then I need to start thinking about what is in my control. So with that worry decision tree, if the answer to the question of what can I do about this right now, then you can start listing very explicitly the actionable items that you can do. And then I think that will help you start feeling better because you're actually doing something to try to solve the issue. And if you're not doing something, it's because you've already answered to yourself that you can't do something that's outside of your control.
What about the people at that point though? So let's say, because I already like hear people, I know this is going to go, right? Where it's like, okay, I'm worrying about something. I've identified, what I can do, I've identified what I can't do. But now that I see all the things that I can't do, I'm actually freaking out about the fact that I'm so out of control. So when you have clients that come in and work with you in therapy and they're like, well, I just, this is uncertain. I can't control this thing. This is the reason why I worry. Is there ways to, I guess, get them out of their head or a journaling practice or something where it's like, just becoming more at ease with understanding like you can't control everything in this world. Like there's a very small amount of things and we just have to kind of trust and have faith that whatever's going to work out outside of our control is going to be what it's going to be. And we're going to have the tools to work through things as they come up? Or like, what do you typically work through with somebody that has those feelings of like uncertainty and like a control problem and wanting to control all of those things that they can't control?
So the controlling worrywart.
Yeah.
That person's challenges are not going to be resolved overnight, especially not in one therapy session. In fact, all the therapy sessions in the world are not going to change this person's behavior or the way that they feel about certain things. What's going to change and evolve their response to this kind of stuff is their own practice. So it's what they choose to do and what they choose to practice outside of the therapy sessions. So it's going to be important for somebody like that to be open to trying the different things that your therapist might talk about if you're in therapy, or if you're on a self-help route. You're going to find a lot of these recommendations too, is to practice the art of shifting your attention to the present moment. And, the person that's saying like, I've now identified all these things that I can't do anything about, and that's just making me feel even more worried because I have no control. It's going to be really important for that person to incorporate a practice of all the things that we talked about, those little tools, but generally mindful living. Basically, like another tenet of mindfulness is having patience, compassion, loving kindness for yourself and for your thoughts, for all of your feelings, all these things that come and go from our psyche. So, one thing I practiced before in a meditative retreat center, I was in an area where there's a lot of mosquitoes. And so everybody has a lot of mosquito bites and we want to scratch it. And I remember the guide at the time was saying like, to me, enlightenment is about being able to have a bunch of mosquito bites, notice them, and not generally have to perceive the sensation from these mosquito bites as discomfort. You can notice the itch and just let it go as a passing sensation. Now, I haven't reached that point. If I have mosquito bites, I want to scratch it. But I think about that example quite often. That's what we're striving for in a mindful life and a practice of, being able to shift attention in our life, in our everyday navigation of the world, is noticing something, a thought, a feeling, a triggering event, and reminding yourself that it's something that's going to pass, so you can notice it and let it go. You don't have to be affected by it. You don't have to be disturbed by it. And now it allows me at least to not get as annoyed when I'm scratching the mosquito bite. I'm still scratching it. So you mentioned something about journaling. I think that can be super helpful for some people. Of course, it's not an all-encompassing thing. I don't think anything in the world of mental, emotional wellness and health is a one-size-fits-all. I don't think that exists here. However, for somebody that's starting from scratch, it can be a really good place to start, because journaling allows you to track your thoughts, track your reflections to your day. So many people are living life kind of aimlessly. And what I mean by that is they're not really taking inventory of anything that they've already accomplished. And so they move through the world thinking, I haven't really accomplished anything, when really it's like, you just haven't been tracking your progress. And journaling is not just, dear diary, today I had so-and-so, whatever. It can also look like just bullet points of stuff that you want to remember from the day. If you have certain goals that you're working towards, it's really about getting explicit about what kind of progress that you made towards it, reflecting on what barriers you had that made it so that you couldn't make any progress today. Because believe it or not, our memories kind of suck. So I don't advise that anybody tries to rely on their memory. So many people rely on their memory and then they feel terrible about themselves. So I do trust in my present self to write something down so that my future self will have a place to reference, a place to remind of all the things that I was able to accomplish.
It's awesome. I love that. So that's what we got for you for today's episode. If you love this episode and you're actually thinking about trying out therapy, once again, you've heard me recommend it so many times. I recommend BetterHelp just because it's so easy to do, and you can do it from home and you can switch therapists whenever you need to. If you want to go ahead and get a 10% discount on your first month, go to betterhelp.com/dial. Once again, betterhelp.com/dial to actually get 10% off your first month and give therapy a try. Welcome to today's episode of the Mindset Mentor Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Dial. If you have not yet done so, hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another podcast episode. And if you're out there and you love this podcast, please give us a rating and review however you listen to us. The more positive rating reviews that we get, the more those platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts show this to other people who have never listened to it before, and more people's lives can be impacted and this podcast can grow. So if you would do that, I would greatly appreciate it. Today, we're going to be talking about why now is the time to turn your life around. No matter where your life is, it could be terrible, it could be okay, it could be good. Now is the time to turn your life around and to find another level. And so I want to tell you a story about myself. In 2010, I remember being in Fort Lauderdale, and I won't forget this moment for the rest of my life. I remember being in my one-bedroom apartment. I had no furniture inside of the entire place. I had my mattress that was on the floor, and I had a bunch of books that were in my living room. I remember sitting in my living room, and I had almost lost my car. I was 5 months behind on my car payment. My business had just failed. My business was crushing it literally 12 months before, and it failed, and I had to shut it down, and I was living off of pasta for 2 months. And I remember sitting there and thinking to myself, sitting on the floor of my one-bedroom apartment in Fort Lauderdale, thinking to myself, I am the only one that can fix this. I remember first off feeling like a victim and being like, why is this my life? How did it come down to this? And I remember thinking to myself and literally looking in my one-bedroom apartment being like, get your shit together. I remember that feeling of like, I am the only one that can fix this. I can play the victim card if I want to, but that's not going to do anything for me. I'm the only one that can fix this. I can't rely on anybody to quote unquote fix me. And I had this feeling of like, I know my life is going to be great. I know I'm going to do something amazing, but I don't know what to do, but I have to do it. And so I think that there's a point in your life where you can either decide to just take with whatever you have in your life, and your life is your life and that's the way it's going to be, or you can say, I'm going to step in the driver's seat and I'm going to drive this thing. And it was at that point in time in my life that I realized that living your life is like being on a plane. And most people have the opportunity to step into the pilot seat of their life, but they just look out the window and they're just like, I wonder where we're going to go. And so that was in 2010. So you fast forward over a decade now, and people see stuff like, oh, I've got millions of followers online. I have, hundreds of millions of downloads of the podcast. I have, a business with, millions of dollars coming in and all this stuff. And people look at it. And I don't say that shit to brag. I don't want to, but none of it was actually easy. Like, number one, none of it was easy. Number two, none of it actually truly matters in the first place. Like, none of it, followers, money, all of those things, none of them actually matter. What matters is the journey that somebody has to go on. It took full belief in myself in pushing through all of that stuff in order to get to where I am. So no matter where your life is, if you're at the lowest of lows, I feel you. I've been there before. I know what it feels like. It friggin' sucks. I get it. But you don't have to be that way forever. If you're doing pretty good in life, maybe you're making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year and you have a decent life, it could always be better. You could always create more. There's still another version of yourself. There's still another level to yourself. If you're out there and you listen to me make a couple $100,000 or a couple $1 million a year, we have a broad range of spectrum of people who listen, from people who are probably at the lowest of lows of life to really, really good right now. There is always another level of you. And that's the beautiful thing about life. And none of this has anything to do with how much money you make, how much money is your bank account, how many followers you have, any of that. It's always, in order to grow in life, whatever that means for you, even if it's just another level of your relationship or another level of your bank account, another level of your business, another level of your content creation, it requires you to grow. So no matter where your life is, I want you to see where you are as rock bottom. Like, there's no lower than this. You're going to only get better and better. There's another level. And the level that you're currently at is the lowest level that you will ever be on. It might not be the lowest level you've ever been on, because things could have been worse at one point in time, but it's the lowest level you'll ever be on. And I want you to look at your life. I remember hearing Joe Rogan talk about this as if you're the hero of your own story. Imagine that, like, right now, your life is a movie. You know, we all love like the comeback stories. We all love movies like The Pursuit of Happiness, where you see Will Smith and he's in the bathroom of the bus stop and he's crying and someone's trying to get into it and he's sleeping on the floor of the bathroom of a bus stop, a public restroom with his son, and you see him crying and it's like you see him hit that rock bottom. And the audience is watching. We're watching and we feel for him and we're just like ready for the comeback. We're sitting there, we're rooting for him. I want you to imagine that where you are right now is your rock bottom. Like there's only other levels for you, higher levels, more expansive levels, better levels for you, but you have to be able to be the person and get yourself out of it. And imagine that there's an audience watching as if there's just a camera crew following you around and they're rooting for you and they want to see you win. They're watching every move that you make. How different would you act? What would your actions be like if there was thousands of people watching you at every single moment? Like, just think about that for a second. If there were thousands of people watching you today, how would your actions have been different today and yesterday? Let's say yesterday, because it's an entire day. How would your actions have been different all of yesterday if you knew you were being watched? Like the Truman Show, thousands of people watching you all day, every day. You know, are you going to wake up in the morning when your alarm goes off, or are you going to hit snooze? Are you going to go to the gym, or are you going to continue to scroll on Instagram? Are you going to watch Netflix, or are you going to put an extra 2 hours into your business after putting the kids down for bed? Think about that for a second. Like, how different would you act if you happened to know that there were thousands of people watching you right now at this moment, every single moment? And so when they see you and they're rooting for you and they're like, this is it. We're ready for we want the success story. We want the success story. Like, how are you going to make your life go from where you are, wherever that might be, to where it is that you could be? And there's people watching you and they're rooting for you and they want you to succeed and they want to see something amazing in your life. And they're like, let's go, dude, make something amazing of your life. How different would your actions be if that's what your life was? Because no one's going to come and save you in your life. It's your job. You're the CEO of your own life. I've said this so many times, but this story is just so potent. And I hear people share it all of the time. I remember my very first coach when I was 19 years old. If you've never heard me say this, if you've heard me say this a million times, you need to hear it over and over again. My very first coach when I was 19 years old, I worked with him for 2.5 years. We had a weekly call every single week for 2.5 years for an hour. And he taught me all kinds of amazing things. I don't remember any conversation except for one conversation. And it was this life-changing conversation for me. And I was late to the call. I hadn't done what my assignments were. I didn't do what I say I was going to do. And I had all of this laundry list of excuses to tell John, my coach, as to why I didn't hit my goals for the past week. And he said, you know what, Rob? I've got a question for you. He said, if you look at a business and a business succeeds, whose fault is that? And I was like, well, you know, it's the owner, the employees, all that stuff. He said, yes, but who's at the top? Like, who's the person who has to move the people and help them go from one place to another? I was like, the CEO. He said, so what you're telling me is that if a business is successful, it's the CEO's fault. And I was like, yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying. He goes, okay. If a business fails, whose fault is that? And I was like, that's also the CEO's fault. He said, okay, do you want to know your problem? And I was like, yeah, I guess I want to know my problem. He goes, your problem is that you're not living your life like the CEO of your life. You're trying to blame everybody else. If a business fails, it's the CEO's fault. If a business succeeds, it's also the CEO's fault. So if you get to the end of your life and you're not where you want to be and you didn't, you know, you're on your deathbed at 90 years old and you're looking back and you're like, damn it, I didn't do what I could have done. I didn't bring the love that I could have. I didn't make the money that I could have. I didn't, you know, have the impact on the world that I could have. I didn't have the fun I could have. I didn't travel the world that I could have. Whose fault is that? And I was like, I guess it's my fault. He goes, yes. But if you did every single thing that you wanted to, if you created the life that you wanted to, if you had the love that you wanted to, you made the money that you wanted to, created the business that you wanted to, had an impact on the world that you wanted to, whose fault is that? And I was like, it would be my fault. He goes, so the problem is you're trying to blame everybody else but yourself. He goes, you need to be the CEO of your life. And it was like that conversation woke me up. And I was like, holy shit. I'm so good at making excuses as to why I don't have the life that I want. I'm blaming everybody else but myself. And at that point in time, I really switched to, okay, Everything is my fault, and I'm going to make everything my fault. And if I look through that viewpoint, I looked around my apartment complex at the time and where I lived and the car that I drove, my crappy Nissan Sentra that was falling apart. And I was like, oh, I can't afford something better because it's my fault. Oh, my business is not where I want it to be because it's my fault. My mindset is not where I want it to be because it's my fault. My body is not where I want it to be because it's my fault. And things just started shifting at that point in time. And I stopped blaming anything externally outside of me. And so what you have to do is make a change right now. You have to look, if you notice the past few episodes, now that we're going into a new year, have been kind of along the same lines. And it's the reason why is because I really want to wake you up to creating the life that you want to and use this new year as the catalyst to do so. I really want you to change your life. I want you to create the life that you want to. Doesn't matter what it is that you want your life to look like. I don't want you to get to the end of your life and wish that it would have been different and wish that you would have found your potential, but you didn't because you're too busy on Netflix, you're too busy on Instagram, you're too busy in your own thoughts and feelings and fears and limiting beliefs. I want you to create something amazing of your life, but I can't make you do it. You've got to be the person to do it. And so how different would your life be right now if there were thousands of people watching you being like, come on, man, just fucking do it. Don't go back on Instagram. Don't go back into Netflix. Don't think about your fears. Don't think about your limiting beliefs. Like, now's the time. You've got to go. There's people rooting for you. How different would your actions be every single day? Hey, don't hit that. Oh, come on, man. Don't hit that snooze button again. Oh, come on, man. Don't go telling yourself you're not good enough again. Oh, come on, man. Don't tell yourself that you can't do this. You've got to start. Like, how different would it be if you knew there was an entire crowd watching every single moment of your life like the Truman Show? It would be vastly different. So why don't you start acting like you're the hero of your own story? Why don't you start acting like there is no one that's going to save you? Why don't you start acting like today is the day that your life's going to change? Because the choice is yours. If you want to stay in bed, you can stay in bed. But if you want to create the life that you want to, you can also get up and do something. If you want to create greatness, you have to be the hero of your own story. The time is now. So I hope you choose greatness. So that's what I got for you for today's episode. If you love this episode, please share it on your Instagram stories and tag me in at Rob Dial Jr., ROBDIALJR. Also, if you're listening to this before the end of the year, before January 1st, and you're interested in making January the best January you've ever had and creating 2023 into the best year that you've ever had, and you want to join in on my 31-day challenge that goes January 1st to January 31st, go to limitless31.com. It is the Limitless Challenge. I'm going to be coaching you every single day. I'm going to be giving you daily meditation. I'm going to be giving you daily journaling exercises. I'm going to be giving you guided meditations. I'm going to be there coaching you, answer your questions, helping you as much as possible. And you're going to be joining a community of people to hold you accountable. There's going to be hundreds of people doing the exact same challenge with you. So if you want to make it the best year of your life, there's going to be 7 different habits that you need to hit every single day throughout these 31 days so that you can create the momentum that you need to into the year. So if you want to join us, myself, coaching you, and hundreds of other people who are going to be going through it with you, go to limitless31.com. Once again, limitless31.com. There's a video there that has all of the information that you need. Join us. I would love to see you there. And I'm going to leave you the same way I leave you every single episode. Make it your mission to make someone else's day better. I appreciate you, and I hope that you have an amazing day.